Each word is a testimony.
A million miles of my mistakes, so couldn't keep your love away. However far away I am from home, that's how far your love will go.
And his word is always true on the Truth. Welcome to Truth Talk Live.
All right, let's talk.
The truth is, I can't hide it. I can't hold it anymore.
A daily program powered by the Truth Network.
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
Where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak
Your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
Disqualified. Why? Why are 70% of young men in America between 18 and 22 not qualified for military service under current recruiting standards? That's kind of a scary thing when you think about it, as the military is obviously being reduced in number. And so we've got our good friend and longtime addition to the Truth Network, Captain Jim Kenney. Used to do Inspire and then Expire Ignite app that he's got, but he had quite a distinguished military service with the Navy and was very much involved in recruiting at one point in time. So, Captain Jim, what's the deal with this?
Well, the numbers have crept up since I was really, really active in recruiting in terms of the number of disqualified men and women, young men and women of military service age in America are disqualified to serve. Basically, there are three different disqualifying areas of concern. The first is their inability to score well enough on the defense vocational aptitude battery. In other words, every recruit is given a chance to take a vocational aptitude test, see where would they best fit and what kind of training would they be best suited for, and what would they be most happy doing in the service. And there's certain minimal scores that are applied depending upon your selected area of design. For example, in the Navy, if an 18-year-old kid wants to study nuclear power, he has to score very, very high on the vocational aptitude battery test in order to be qualified to enter into that kind of educational program within the military. On the other hand, if you're going to chip paint on a ship for 3 years and go see the world, which is one of the Navy's advertising efforts, join the Navy and see the world, you don't have to score nearly so high. It doesn't take quite the educational background and educational acumen to learn how to keep a ship decks clean and surfaced and painted and serve as a deckhand. On the other hand, if you're going down into the bowels of the ship and it's a nuclear powered ship, you're going to have to demonstrate before you even start into the training. But the point of that discussion is at the lower end, people are disqualified from anything because they can't score well enough on the vocational aptitude battery to even be qualified for any kind of military training. And that number is growing and growing. The people scoring in that level is growing and growing. And currently, the military trying to reach its all-volunteer force levels of requirement have lowered that score several times over the Biden administration time, the last 4 or 5 years. And what you're doing is you're lowering the overall capacity of the military to keep up with the technical advances that are going on with all the new weapon systems and artificial intelligence and computers and satellites and space command and all those kind of things that are coming online, while the people that are available to serve, that number is getting smaller and smaller in terms of qualification. That's one disqualifying point. Another disqualifying point is educational achievement. When a young man or woman who might be otherwise qualified has dropped out of high school and does not have the minimum academic credential of a high school diploma, they are significantly handicapped. I don't know what the numbers are for the service today, but those numbers, which the military wants to accept those people into training, are relatively small because they have a history of dropping out. They dropped out of high school. They dropped out of some other things in life usually. And our records show that if we offer them an opportunity to come in and serve, that they quit before they're certified, qualified, and able to help us in our active service. And a second major area is physical fitness. It's amazing the number of young people 18 to 22 that are not physically fit enough to serve. There's pre-diabetic issues, weight issues, and of course, Robert Kennedy Jr. has mentioned all of the chronic diseases that are so prevalent in America today that they're disqualifying people from young people from being able to serve on active duty. And the final thing is police involvement. It's a moral question. A lot of our 16 and 17-year-old kids have unacceptable police involvement, whether it's a DUI or in New York. I had a command in New York City, and we lost a lot of kids because they did things like gate hopping to get on the subways and get caught and do that kind of thing. They're young, they're immature, but when they get police involvement, they're disqualified without certain waivers that might have to be applied. So when you add all of those things together, you have a broken fishing pond. If you want to think about the recruiting pool as a fishing pond, the fewer and fewer fish that you're going to take home and fry for dinner. So that's where you get to the fact that they're barely over 20%, maybe 25% of the total male-female population in the recruitable age, 18 to 22, 23, could qualify to serve today. To me, that's an indictment of some other things that are going on. I think that our public school system is so broken that a lot of these kids are getting artificial high school diplomas, or maybe not even getting a diploma. They certainly aren't being prepared to become young adults and to go to work in the real world, to become participating citizens in this great nation. And that includes being able to serve in the military, let alone go to work productively in their hometown, or go to work, in some specific field of endeavor that they want to try to make a career of. We've just broken them because of our public school system. And the second major factor, which has grown by leaps and bounds in the last
Jim, we got to go to a break, but we want to tell you that this is clearly a live show. And if you want to call in and comment on the subject matter, we would love to hear from you. 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. Disqualified. What's going to go on with our military? Don't worry. We got some great recommendations coming, not just the problem, but there are solutions, and they're coming.
Joy to the world. How about joy to the wise men?
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus.
Matthew 2 verse 10 says, when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. These dignitaries from the East likely were loaded with wealth, power, and knowledge, but nothing could satisfy them and give them that deep joy of soul like what they found or who they found when they encountered Jesus Christ. They bowed and worshiped him and gave him all kinds of gifts. Have you found the joy of Jesus? Happiness is based on happenings often, but joy comes from the bedrock truth of the Savior who came to fill our lives like nothing else can or ever will. And that's why we say wise men still seek him, because in his presence is fullness of joy.
True Commentary with Stu Epperson, author of the book, First Words of Jesus. Available now in bookstores, or go online to firstwordsofjesus.com.
Over the years, you've brought them into your home. You were prescribed opioids after the C-section, when Dad injured his back, when your basketball star tore his ACL. Opioids helped with the pain, and you held on to them just in case. But did you know holding on to unused opioids puts your family at risk? Opioids are powerful pain-reducing prescription medicines, but most people who are prescribed opioids don't finish their prescriptions. So millions of unused opioids are sitting in homes across the country. And tragically, more than 100 Americans die every day from overdoses involving opioids. What can you do to protect your family? Remove the risk of unused opioids from your home. Pills, patches, or syrups in drawers, purses, and cabinets, anywhere they might be hiding. To find out how to dispose of them properly, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
This is John MacArthur with another edition of Portraits of Grace. Did you know that the Christian life is not primarily about what we do, but it's about what we are? Plenty of people do good things, but aren't righteous. You see, the right path to true spirituality begins with having the right attitude, and that comes from the right heart. Unfortunately, many Christians seem to miss this. To them, being a Christian is a matter of do's, going to church, performing good deeds, and don'ts, such as not doing this or not doing that. And they see external behavior as the fact of Christianity instead of the manifestation of it. Don't let yourself become a slave to acting a certain way. Make sure that you really are a product of attitudes and that your life is the overflow of the purity of your heart. This is John MacArthur, looking forward to bringing you more Portraits of Grace.
I'm Adam Holtz, and you're listening to Plugged In on the Truth Network.
You've all been chosen to spend your Christmas Eve here with 200,000 impatient travelers.
In the new movie Carry On, now in theaters, we meet Ethan Kopech. He's a low-level TSA baggage screener. His pregnant girlfriend, Nora, works at the same airport, too. On Christmas Eve, Ethan's contacted by a guy who says Ethan should let a certain package pass through the scanning machine, or else it's curtains for Nora. But lowly baggage screener or not, Ethan's not letting terrorists through on his watch. If Carry On sounds like a die-hard retread, well, it is, though the violence and language are dialed down to PG-13 levels. In the end, Ethan proves to be pretty heroic, even if the plot is pretty predictable. So we're giving Carry On a 2.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. Read the full review at pluggedin.com/radio. I'm Adam Holtz for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
Had Jesus had an earthly father like the rest of humanity, he would not have been able to save us from sin.
Teacher on Leading the Way, Dr. Michael Youssef.
If we are all born sinners because we had human fathers, and if we're all born with that propensity to sin, it's because we've inherited from our father, Father Adam. Mom and Dad, you know when you spank the naughtiness in your child, you know what you're doing? You're spanking daddy's sin from him or her. Because sin comes through the Father. And had Jesus had a natural father, he would not have been able to save himself, let alone save others who will come and believe in him.
You can hear more challenging teaching from Dr. Youssef on Leading the Way, or visit ltw.org.
Disqualified today on Truth Talk Live. The military has gigantic manpower issues, as we've talked about in the first segment, that 70% of the young men in America between 18 and 22 cannot qualify for military service. And we have with us Captain Jim Kinney, who went through these three main ideas. We're going to see if we can simplify them so we can get to the problem. We'll hopefully get to the solution. It's complicated, but I think I'm tracking. So essentially, there's three major areas that they're disqualified in. They're not physically qualified, and they're not morally qualified. In other words, they have some kind of police involvement. And then mentally, it sounded to me and I just wanted to see if you would agree with this statement, that a lot of people, since it's an all volunteer force, I'm not going to join the military unless I can find a vocation that seems to fit what I want to be, what I want to do in the military, right? Like if I'm not into chipping paint and I do want to see the world and what I really want to do is fly airplanes like you did or something along those lines, that takes higher scores. And when they don't qualify, they no longer are trying to recruit, not under the process, or what?
Well, yes and no. Yes, you're right. Kids come to the military hoping to get training in some specific area of personal vocational interest, okay? And they have to score certain levels on the entrance exams in order to be qualified for those schools. But the problem is worse than that, because there is a cutoff, a very low score, in which you can't do anything in the military. We won't take you in and take the risk of trying to train you up to be capable of doing something valuable in defense of American security because your test scores are so low. I would put this in the area of either academic credentialing will disqualify you. For example, dropping out of high school puts a tremendous burden on your ability to qualify to serve in the military. So you don't have a high school diploma. And then your test scores at the front end of the recruiting process are administered to everybody who comes to seek a job in the military. Your test scores aren't sufficiently good enough to allow you to either serve at all or serve in some area of vocational training in which you think you would excel. So you've got the testing side of it and the academic credentialing side of it. You've got the physical side of it. You know, John F. Kennedy's talked about all the chronic health issues that have attacked our kids and our culture. And it's very evident in the recruiting requirements for the military. And then third is the moral level of have you in your youthful foolishness got cross-threaded with the legal system in a way that disqualifies you. And between those three, any one of which can be disqualifying, maybe 25% of our youth in the age group 18 to 22 get even qualify to serve without seeking out some significant waivers on the standards. And let me back up and put an overarching title on this thing. America is currently facing an existential threat to our national security because the all-volunteer force is failing. It cannot recruit enough young men and women to meet the needs to defend the American security interests in the global situation. Now they're disqualified for the three reasons we've been talking about. What's going to have oh, and I didn't get to mention one that fits in the moral element as well, and that is the disintegration of American families. You realize that less than 20% of our children, high school age and under, are being raised in what you and I would have considered traditional homes when we were teenagers. Less than 20% of our kids live in homes with a standard father and mother and an intact family. So,
wow. Well, I gotta get the number out there because I know somebody's sitting there wanting to dial in and you don't have it. So 866-348-7884 is the number to call in and let us know what you think. 866-348-7884. So here's this gigantic problem. I think you've outlined it, but fortunately, right, we've just had a change of the guard, so to speak, and there's new hope of that you've got in this whole area, right? Right, Cam?
Yes. Yeah. Well, there are two or three things that this change in administration means, and it may mean some good news for the military because the administration that's transitioning out misdirected the military, the Department of Defense, so badly that whether I know your proper pronouns or not is more important than whether I know how to reassemble an M1 rifle. It's just the things that the current military under this administration is moving the Department of Defense away from the basic skills needed to be a successful defense force towards one that's more socially adaptable. And of course, certainly that's not where the military fits in our stream of the cultural things that are happening around us. So, and by the way, here's a startling fact. And I'm going to state this very bluntly, and if people want to call in and ask, I'm happy to defend it. Liberals do not serve in the Department of Defense. They do not volunteer in any significant numbers to be a part of the all-volunteer force. So you've shrunk the fishing pond by that designation. You've shrunk the swimming pond, the fishing pond by the moral implications that we face today. And that comes from broken families, and it comes from immature kids. We've shrunken the pond because of our health concerns. We spend more time on video games than we spend exercising and eating properly. And we've shrunk the pool because of our academic failures in the public school system. So you put all that together, and it's an existential threat. We are already under recruiting. I think the number was approaching 50,000 people last year in terms of meeting the needs of the recruiting goals for the all-volunteer force, and getting worse. And that's after we've lowered all the standards well below what we would have accepted 15 years ago to serve. So it is an existential threat if we don't find a solution. And I think we can talk about a solution at some point, but and there is one. Well, there's probably more than one. I'm promoting one because I think it's the easiest and most rapidly doable in terms of
let's go for it. Jim, what is from your standpoint, what can we do?
Well, the Department of Defense is going to have to accept the responsibility to build out and stock the fish ponds. And that means we're going to have to take unqualified people and put them through some intensive training to enable them to be able to be physically fit, to get away from all of these childhood diseases that our current public health program has promoted within our culture. It means we have to, I hate to use the word parole. I think parole is a word that some people associate with hardened criminals. But if we have young 16, 17, 18-year-olds that have foolishly done things that got them cross-threaded with our legal system, if we had a program that could monitor them with adult supervision for some period of time, like putting someone out.
Jim, I hate we got to go to another break, but great idea is coming up, as you can see. And, of course, we would love your questions or comments, 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
Here are the contest rules for the Truth Network. Prizes won are not transferable, redeemable for cash, or exchangeable for any other prize. All prizes must be redeemed from the station within 30 days of winning. Only one prize per household from any station of Truth Broadcasting within any 30-day period. The rest of our contest rules are listed under the About Us link at our website, truthnetwork.com. Thanks for playing and listening to the Truth Network.
From Love Worth Finding, here's Adrian Rogers with a treasure from the Word.
I was reading recently about a young ensign who had made his first trip on a destroyer. He had impeccable training, and so it was assigned to him to take that destroyer out of the harbor. It was his first endeavor to do such a thing, and he wanted to do it right. And in a moment, the deck was buzzing with action, and everything was moving like a Swiss clock. They were on their way in record time when someone came to the young ensign and said, "You have a message from the captain." And the captain said, "Young man, you've done an excellent job." But he said, "There is an unwritten rule that you've overlooked. The next time you set sail, make certain the captain is on board." Now, what he had done was to leave the captain back on the shore. And I want to say to you, friend, that no matter how wise your plans are and how capable you are before you set sail anywhere, you'd better make certain that the captain is on board, that you are in the will of God. Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 23 says, "It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps."
For more about Love Worth Finding and Adrian Rogers, visit our website at lwf.org.
In a world that wants to pull you down, you found the station that helps keep your mind on things above. The Truth Network.
We all love getting good news.
It was an easy fix, no charge.
You've done a great job. You can expect a little bonus in your next paycheck.
Now imagine news that is so good, God sends an angel to announce it. That's just what happened when Jesus Christ was born. Billy Graham shares more.
The news which the angel of the Lord brought on that first Christmas night was the greatest news ever revealed, that God not only loved the world, but in the person of his Son, he had come to identify himself with us. But the greatest news of all was, he shall save his people from their sins.
Discover how that news can change your life forever. Go to findpeacewithgod.net. Findpeacewithgod.net. Merry Christmas from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association.
And now, your Pathway Minute with Dr. Robert Jeffress.
And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed upon him. You can just see them nudging one another, whispering. Why did Jesus read this passage today? Is Jesus inferring what I think he's saying? Is he claiming to be the M word? Is that what he's saying? Surely not. When Jesus sat down for the explanation, he answered that question clearly. Verse 21, and Jesus began to say to them, today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. You've been waiting for the Messiah? Your wait is over. I am he.
Pathway Minute is produced by Pathway to Victory. To access the Bible teaching of Dr. Robert Jeffress, go to ptv.org.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today we're talking about disqualified. Why are 70% of our young men and women disqualified for military service before we even get going? And then we got all sorts of other factors. So we need some help. We need some help in creating a bigger fish pond, as Captain Jim Kinney was putting it, to be able to recruit some folks to fully, have the manpower that the defense system needs. And we would love to know your thoughts. 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. I love this idea that you're talking about of a solution. And to read out what you wrote here, it's beautiful. It says, expand the existing delayed entry program with recruiting services to provide the necessary education, fitness, and adult supervision to enable interested applicants to overcome identified deficiencies and become eligible for enlistment. The program expansion, the delayed entry program academy would offer a 52-week of weekend programming dedicated to improving the physical, moral, and mental qualifications of the applicants. I love that. And you even have a way that they would be compensated for that. And essentially, it's sort of a pre-military military.
Well, it's exactly what it is. The Department of Defense cannot continue to lower standards in order to try to meet necessary numbers, because of the complexity of war today and war fighting today, with all of the computerized weapon systems, with artificial intelligence, with space command. The quality of the serviceman and woman has to keep up with that. It can't be lagging behind further and further because we can't get the numbers on board, so we lower the standards. So what we have to do is we have to reach into this pond and find some of these kids that are currently disqualified by one or even more of the standards that are required, and give them a targeted second chance. And what I mean by that is we can increase their academic standards. In the idea behind a delayed entry education program, a deep program, academy, is that we'll take kids and sign them up, but delay their entry into active duty until they can reach certain standards of behavior, certain standards of fitness, certain standards of academic prowess. And we assume the responsibility because the public school system is broken, public health system is broken, and the homes they're coming from are broken. Let me tell you that this can be one of the greatest socially and culturally valuable programs we could institute in the face of where America is today, in a broken culture and in the divisions that divide us so much, is to grab these young people at an age when they're still impressionable, we can rescue them and give them a second chance at turning into prosperous, successful citizens participating in the American dream.
Right, because when you think about it, I mean, that's really brilliant, because as these young people would be recruited into this program, especially those that, had some problem with the police, or they didn't get a high school diploma, or they're physically, incapable of doing it, as they get through that program and then to, spend 4-8 years, whatever, in the military with the complex systems that they would be using and the programming that they're using, whatever, they would come out with all sorts of skills, right? To enter the technological world of the future and have some discipline to go with it, essentially.
There's another interesting aspect to what we're talking about, which I haven't mentioned, and that is that the new administration is absolutely committed to full employment. And the truth is that recruiting for the military becomes more difficult when the basic economy is at full employment, because there are other options for these kids that are militarily desirable, that we would like to recruit in the military, but there are other options for them in a full employment environment. This program will be recruiting kids in a demographic that most of the American businesses and educational institutions are not reaching into. These are kids that have been thrown away, if you will, by the culture at a very young age, 16, 17, 18 years old. They're already marked as having significant handicaps towards achieving the American dream. And we can reach into that group of people, and we can, with dedication and the right curriculum, we can give them we can elevate their potential and give them a second opportunity, and in the process build a bigger fishing pond for the all-volunteer force.
Right, because it's really a cool thing that it not only defends the country, but it upgrades in so many different ways, both educationally, physically, and morally. All those things are getting you going. Well, we got Conrad is in Virginia. He's got a comment for us. Conrad, you're on Truth Talk Live. Good evening.
Yes, sir. And thank you for having my input here. We don't need another government program from a woke government that's just going to pile on more social engineering programs. This is one of the problems. Bring back the draft. That's all I got to say. Bye-bye.
Well, that's an interesting comment, and that is an option. That's a second option. Force people to serve without having any desire to do so, or ill-equipped. The draft does not increase their ability to handle complex weapon systems, to deal with AI, to transition from a relatively lax culture into the discipline required to serve in the military, and come under authority and understand the proper application of authority. God established a hierarchy of authority, and we've ignored it, and we've got an awful lot of people, young people in that age group that is desirable for entry into military service, that have no idea what it means to be under authority. So yes, the draft will get you numbers. I'm not sure it will solve some of the other problems that we're talking about.
Yeah, I love the fact that people are calling in with other opinions, and we would love yours. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH.
Let me say something to his other concern, if I could. If the new administration doesn't take on the issues he was talking about, the wokeness within the military, we don't need training people in learning proper pronouns. We don't need training in sensitivity training and worrying about trigger words and all this tender stuff that our culture has to run and find a safe place because somebody said something that triggered them because they didn't agree with that person's particular point of view of life. Democracy requires a rapid, vigorous exchange of ideas. Not everybody's in agreement on everything, but we have raised a culture of youth that rather than deal with someone who has a different opinion, I want to find a safe space, and I want to issue you a list of trigger words. You're not to use these words in my presence. Well, that's
obviously,
not military.
I'm just thinking about what, our caller Conrad had talked about, that he's concerned that we just institute another government program. However, one of the major, from my understanding, the basics of government is to protect its people. That's right. That, if government's for something, it's not an overall program. It's just simply like, I'm kind of counting on you guys to as far as the military is supposed to be able to protect the country. And if you don't have the people, then obviously you got to train the people to be able to take the people into the current process. Or you extend the training program once people are recruited, however that works. Obviously all that's got to be incorporated. And so how are you thinking that's going to, in other words, you have your connections with the military, but how does this get in place? In other words, what can we do? What can we vote? How can we pray? What's the next step on this plan, Jim?
Well, what I'm trying to do right now is just raise public awareness. This issue that is literally a threat to our future freedoms is getting very little discussion. I may have heard it mentioned 2 or 3 times in the entire presidential campaign. This idea that the all-volunteer force is failing and is going to be, is currently, if China wants Taiwan, they can have it based on the current military readiness posture of the American Defense Force. And nobody's talking about it. So we're trying to raise the awareness of the threat and then begin to discuss solutions. My daddy used to tell me anybody can find a problem and complain about it. The wise people are the ones who find a problem and look for a fix. So that's what we're trying to do here. Not only is this a significant problem, but we need reasonably quick solutions in order to overcome.
Well, we'll be right back.
Situation.
We got Micah's in Dayton, and we need you. 866-34-TRUTH. We'll be right back.
My name is Judy Teeter, and I'm the mother of 3 boys. My youngest, Joe, was a great kid. He loved sports, music, and his youth group. One day, Joe asked me to drive him to an after-school event, which was about a mile from our home. I was driving through a green light when a car in cross traffic ran a red light and drove right into the side of our car, killing Joe. The driver was talking on her phone, so she never even saw the red light. She was so absorbed in her phone call. Before the crash, I didn't realize just talking on a cell phone while driving was so dangerous. Now it's something I think about every day. According to the National Safety Council, about 1 in 4 car crashes involves a cell phone. Hands-free is no safer. When you're behind the wheel, put away your phone. For Joe and for the thousands of needless deaths every year. Remember, there is no safe way to talk on a cell phone while driving. Find out more at nsc.org/callskill. My name is Judy Teeter, and I'm the mother of 3 boys. My youngest, Joe, was a great kid. He loved sports, music, and his youth group. One day, Joe asked me to drive him to an after-school event, which was about a mile from our home. I was driving through a green light when a car in cross traffic ran a red light and drove right into the side of our car, killing Joe. The driver was talking on her phone, so she never even saw the red light. She was so absorbed in her phone call. Before the crash, I didn't realize just talking on a cell phone while driving was so dangerous. Now it's something I think about every day. According to the National Safety Council, about 1 in 4 car crashes involves a cell phone. Hands-free is no safer. When you're behind the wheel, put away your phone. For Joe and for the thousands of needless deaths every year. Remember, there is no safe way to talk on a cell phone while driving. Find out more at nsc.org/calls.
A Love Language Minute. Here's Dr. Gary Chapman on determining if your anger is legit.
Martin Luther was angered at what he saw, and he moved out to do something about it. The purpose of anger is always to stimulate us to positive action designed to set things straight. One of the best ways to determine whether your anger is legitimate is to run it by an objective friend. I say objective now. I don't mean the kind of friend that always tells you exactly what you want to hear. I would guess that about half of our anger is not legitimate. Because our thinking is distorted, because our personalities are twisted, because we were thinking the wrong way, because our feelings are all twisted inside, we interpret people's actions as being wrong when they are not, in fact, wrong.
For more answers, go to startmarriageright.com.
This is Ann Graham Lotz with Daily Light for Daily Living. There was a time I struggled in my marriage relationship. For months, I focused intently on the relationship with my husband. I walked on eggshells all the time, trying to be so very careful to say the right thing, to do the right thing, to look or feel or act the right way. But God gently impressed on me that my focus was wrong. I was not to concentrate on my relationship with my husband, but to concentrate on my relationship with God, because God loved my husband. And if I would allow God to fill me with himself, his love for my husband would be there. 1 John 4:16 confirms, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. Listen to me. Focus on God. Ask him to fill you with his love. He will. I know. This is Ann Graham Lotz.
Hi, I'm Barry McGuire, the author of Ignite Your Life, and I'm here to explain how you can defeat fear effortlessly. There's no question that ending fear in your life ignites your life. That's the entire focus of our Ignite ministry. Best of all, you can defeat fear with effortless faith. You can forget about trying to trust God in your own strength. It doesn't work that way. The entirety of the Bible calls us to his great commission, being salt and light, being his ambassador, his reconciler, loving our neighbors and their salvation as much as our own. And then in Isaiah 43:10, he tells us why, so that we will believe. Sharing your faith is God's way to exploit your faith and destroy your fears effortlessly. Sharing your faith biblically without preparation, Mark 13:11, and allowing the Holy Spirit to give you the words to say, Luke 12:12, is the ultimate way to experience intimacy with God. Knowing God is speaking through you and changing the life in front of you. That's God's path for you to experience wholehearted faith and to defeat fear effortlessly. If you want to ignite your life, go to igniteamerica.com.
Disqualified today on Truth Talk Live. Apparently nearly 70%, or maybe more than 70%, of American youth are not qualified for military service. And what are we going to do about that? We've been hearing from Captain Jim Kinney. We got a couple more people to chime in. We got Chuck is in Dayton, Ohio. Chuck, you're on Truth Talk Live. What think you, my friend?
Well, I think Israel, South Korea, and a lot of other countries that are under a lot of threat constantly, they use draft and militia quite a bit. I think we need to, and then our leadership too. I mean, I've seen some pictures of some of the people that are admirals and generals that in our current government that would instill anything but patriotism and courage and just downright I don't know. I don't have the words for it. I think you know what I'm talking about.
So what say you, Jim?
Well, I'll say this, and this may be controversial to some, but for those of us who served significant time in uniform, our current Secretary of Defense should have been court-martialed when he went AWOL for 7 days and didn't even tell the President of the United States where he was. Those are the kind of people that are leading the Biden military Department of Defense. And everybody who has commented on that is absolutely right. Those things are killing us. There's no leadership. The withdrawal from Afghanistan proved that. No one is held accountable. It used to be in the military that we understood accountability. But now it doesn't appear as if that is a continuing virtue in the organization. And part of that's because you can't let somebody go because there's nobody to backfill because we don't have enough people to fill the ranks in the all-volunteer force. So it's a death cycle, a death spiral. And I agree with the comments that other countries have a more patriotic base to build from than we do in America today. We have torn down statues of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and built statues to George Floyd, which says a whole lot about the values of the current culture in America. We've got to reteach, we've got to retrain, we've got to rescue these kids that are in the viable age group for military service, rescue them and give them a second chance by training them, fixing the deficiencies that the current public school system and the home environments have created in that pool of people for whom the future of America's liberty depends.
Right. Well, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you calling in. We're going to go to Mike, is in Dayton, Ohio as well. Mike, what think you?
I was in the Marine Corps. My grandfather was in the Army in World War II. My dad was in the Army. My brother was in the Marine Corps. My sister was in the Marine Corps. I have a nephew and who's at who went through dang on it, my brain stopped.
That's all right.
He went through
what do you think, Mike?
What do I think? Okay, real quickly. I have a little experience on this, and I think it starts with the homestead for sure, and then the school as well. School is teaching, not patriotism. When I went through school, we said the Pledge of Allegiance and we prayed before this class started. Now they don't do any of that. There's no
really in Ohio. They don't say the Pledge of Allegiance.
No, they say it on a radio station, which is a country radio station. I don't listen to that anymore, but anyways, they, but they do say it on that station every morning. But it's just, the patriotism in schools that we're proud of our country, proud of our.
I guess I've just told. I feel ignorant. Like, Jim, is that true that kids in school don't say the Pledge of Allegiance anymore?
They don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. Certainly, prayer was. In fact, if you go back, I'm going to try to remember the years accurately.
Well, I knew about the prayer, but
68, and 72. Each one of those years, the federal courts took the Bible out of classroom, took the prayer out of classroom, and said abortions are legal. And we destroyed the moral foundation and structure. The scripture says that parents are to teach this to their children and the children to their children's children, and that it is the family that transmits these values to our caller. Thank you. You come from a family that has the kind of values that all of us used to recognize as being an appropriate part of the development of our youth. That doesn't exist anymore. Your family has a unique history. Congratulations on that. We are left with such a deficit. We have got to find a way to rescue these people and bring back the exact kind of family values that your caller was talking about.
Hang on, I got to get some verification on this, since I have Nick right here, one of our younger folks. And so, Nick, I am very curious. You came up in the newer schools, obviously, than I did. Did you guys not say the Pledge of Allegiance in school?
We said the Pledge of Allegiance in school, like elementary and middle school. But once I got to high school, I realized a lot of people, they on their own, they stopped saying the middle school. They would stand up in respect, but they would not say the Pledge of Allegiance.
So there was, like, right within the school, there were protesters.
I wouldn't say like protesters.
Well, it's just another example of the failure of our public schools to maintain this sort of a common culture, common history, common understanding of our core values.
So what? Hang on, Jim. So, well, I still got Nick. I'm just curious. I'm just trying to understand. So, when you went to college,
yeah,
what was it like there?
College was different. College, everyone has different schedules, and everyone has different values and beliefs. And I went to college where there are different religions. So not everyone, and there are people from different countries in my class. So of course they're not going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, because sometimes they don't even know it. And so in college, I don't remember ever one time saying the Pledge of Allegiance, like back in college.
Even at sporting events, now we know that athletes don't even have to stand at attention for the pledge or for the national anthem at sporting events.
So that's and Mike, you brought out this point. I hadn't even really considered that. And again, because I guess my kids, they went to Calvary Baptist, day school, that kind of thing, and they were saying the Pledge of Allegiance at every turn of the, whatever. But and certainly they also pledged allegiance to the Christian flag. I mean, that was part of what happened in for my children. So I didn't have any understanding that, like, wow. And so from somebody like your point of view, Mike, where your family is served in the military and all those things, and obviously, Jim, yours as well. A lot of those people died to protect those rights. What does that feel like when people aren't there anymore?
Yeah, it feels like they're living our country down, living our way of life down, living our ability to worship God down. Taking our individual rights away to, the freedom of assembly to worship God. When we have threats from other countries, that's exactly what they want to do. They want us to shut us down, so we're not fellowshipping God anymore. They want to control us from sun up to sundown, and they don't want us to have our freedom. And I've been overseas, and so probably has the Jim. But it's a different culture.
Jim,
definitely.
Jim has been overseas over the because Jim flew those really high altitude planes that went over the whole world, didn't you, Jim? And so,
well, I was in reconnaissance work. Yes, sir.
And so, from your standpoint, Jim, to get to because we only got a couple minutes, and I do want to get to the actual, like, man, you have done a great job, Captain, today from my standpoint of explaining to us something I had no idea. And I bet you there's a bunch of people out there had no idea. And like you said, you provided a solution, but more, you provided information that gives us everybody something to think about. But I want to give you the last minute or so to finish your thoughts.
Okay. Well, let me sum up a couple of things from the program. One of the callers had said that we didn't need a new program. The delayed entry program exists in all 4 military services right now. It is underutilized. It needs to be repurposed and refunded and built back into the robust tool that it could be. Secondly, he is right. We don't need any more woke. We don't need any more DEI. I grew up and you grew up believing in equality. Equality meant everybody should have a fair start in life. And then given God-given talents, given effort, given opportunity, we end up in different places, but we get to start equally. Today's culture is preaching equity. Equity has nothing to do with where you started. They're trying to engineer equal outcomes. Well, you can't engineer equal outcomes. You can only give people equal opportunities. So we've lost that core essence of freedom and of God-given rights. In this pursuit of DEI, rather than the old-fashioned patriotism that used to motivate us. Now, to talk more specifically about the Delayed Entry Education Program Academy, it would take a year to get us into a situation where it's truly workable. But it does a couple of other things we didn't even talk about. One is, if you have all these young people under contract,
Jim, we got about 20 seconds. You're going to have to roll here. Go.
If there was a national emergency, this would be a pool of people that are already connected to the military service and could be called up in emergencies. That does.
All right. Appreciate it, you guys. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Jim, for being with us today.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. See you, Nick. Thank you.
No
God
problem.
bless you. All right. Bye-bye.
Signed off?
Yeah, we're all clear. We're all signed off. We do appreciate you for
Thanks.
being part of it.
I enjoyed it. Maybe we make a little dent everywhere we can. We do what we can, right? And then throw the seeds out and trust God to bring them to harvest, right?
Sure. All right, but thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.
And you too. Merry Christmas.